the state, and the country. I'm so happy to give you my husband, my partner, and my best friend, the next Democratic senator from the great state of Maine.
What strength and courage in adversity looks like. And I want to thank her, obviously, for those very kind words. And also I want to thank all of you for your love and support for the woman I love. Later in these remarks, I'm going to talk about my plan for universal health care. But for Diana and me, our experience has strengthened our determination to ensure that every family has a family doctor and that everyone in Maine can get the care they need when they need it.
Right on.
I want to recognize Tom Ledoux. I mean, I can completely understand how excited he is to be engaged in a campaign in this incredibly pivotal and exciting year. And I also want to thank Dick Durbin, who we'll introduce in a few minutes, for coming from Illinois to be here, the #2 man in the United States Senate, a terrific Democrat, a great American. We're going to be very, very pleased to hear from him. Well, a few things. The Bush-Cheney administration and its congressional allies, as you know, have weakened this country at home and abroad. Their politics and priorities have divided Americans against each other, undermined our economy, and cost us respect around the globe. This is our moment for change.
Right on.
As you all know, our state's motto is "Dirigo, I lead." And I want Maine to lead the change this country needs. Maine will lead by helping to elect a Democratic president, for a starter.
Yeah.
We have two extraordinarily gifted presidential candidates who have gone all the way through this presidential primary process, and whatever the pundits say, we will unite around our... to lead America by strengthening the Democratic majority in the Senate so a Republican minority there can no longer filibuster the change we need in this country. And Maine is going to lead America by electing Democrats to the House in Washington, to the State House in Augusta, and to leadership in local communities across the length and breadth of the state of Maine.
Rock and roll!
Now, the Maine media may be focused on Senator Susan Collins and me, but this Senate race is really not about us. It's about you, each one of you, your families, your children, your grandchildren. It's about the lobsterman in Rockland, the farmer in Van Buren, and the working mother in Auburn who can't find decent health care they can afford for their families. It's about the workers in Old Town, Pittsfield, Guilford, and most recently in Millinocket, laid off because of soaring fuel costs and bad trade deals that sent their jobs overseas. It's about the parents in Standish, Bucksport, and Kingfield who want their kids to have the opportunity to go to college. It's about the truckers, farmers, fishermen, and small businesses and families from Lubec to Elliott, from Freiburg to Belfast, whose fuel costs have soared for the past 7 years. This election is about important choices between competing sets of ideas, between failed policies or a new direction, the status quo or change, fear or hope. This year, Maine people have an extraordinary opportunity and a great responsibility, because getting a working majority for change in the United States Senate depends on a handful of states, and Maine is one of the few that will determine the future direction of the country. Susan Collins, and I know she cares about the state of Maine. But Susan Collins and I fundamentally disagree on the most important issues that our country faces today. That's why I decided to get into this race. Those disagreements are on the record, in plain view, for anyone who looks at what we've done in the last 12 years in Congress. I voted against the Iraq War in 2002, and she voted for it. I believe we need to end this war. She hopes our position will improve. I believe we need to set a firm deadline to bring our troops safely and responsibly home from Iraq. She doesn't. As George Mitchell demonstrated in bringing peace to Northern Ireland, a deadline will maximize pressure on the leaders of the different factions in Iraq to compromise their political differences and begin rebuilding their own country. Susan Collins is now the only member of the Maine delegation who continues to support an open-ended commitment for the President's failed policies in Iraq. Now, Maine people have very high standards for our senators. From the day you sent me to Congress, I stood up to the powerful interests like the big drug, insurance, and oil companies who put profit before people, and sometimes even profit before patriotism. Earlier this year, Congress approved legislation that Congressman John Tierney of Massachusetts and I wrote to establish an independent, bipartisan commission to investigate and punish waste, fraud, and profiteering in Iraq and Afghanistan by Halliburton and KBR. Our legislation was modeled on Senator Harry Truman's legendary work during World War II to uncover waste and fraud in Army contracting. Similar legislation on Iraq was blocked by all the Republicans in the United States Senate in 2005 and 2006. Investigations into Iraqi reconstruction should have started 5 years ago when Senator Collins was first urged to hold hearings on no-bid, cost-plus, billion-dollar contracts for Halliburton and KBR. As chair of the Chief Oversight Committee of the United States Senate, that was quite simply her job. 2 weeks ago, she told WGME Channel 13 that she didn't hold hearings on waste, fraud, and abuse because they would have been, and I quote, partisan political theater. Susan Collins and I disagree about that. It's not partisan political theater to ask why Halliburton was overcharging American taxpayers by hundreds of millions of dollars for oil brought in from Kuwait or meals served to our troops. That was her job. It's not partisan political theater. It's not partisan political theater to demand that KBR officials explain why they provided water to our troops in Baghdad that was contaminated with E. coli and coliform bacteria. That was just her job. It's not partisan political theater to find out why KBR was burning $85,000 trucks in the desert for lack of a spare tire, or why $9 billion in American currency for reconstruction projects went missing in 2004. That was her job. Senator Collins' job was not so much to show up for every vote, but to stand up for the American taxpayer and the American soldier. Susan Collins and I disagree about the Bush administration's economic policies that reward the wealthiest Americans over the hard-working middle class. She supports those policies, and I don't. I voted against the unfair Bush tax breaks for the very wealthy because they benefited the very rich at the expense of the middle class and have created the largest budget deficits in our nation's history. John McCain said in 2001, quote, "I cannot in good conscience support a tax cut in which so many benefits go to the most fortunate among us at the expense of middle-class Americans who most need tax relief." Now, as Barack Obama recently said about Senator McCain's conscience, he got over it.